Hi, my name is Mike Glenn, and I am the president of the Engaged Church Network, and we're here with my friend Darrel Girardier, who is joining us to talk about pastors and social media. Now, my buddy here has been with communications all of his life in some form or fashion. But recently, the last several years, you've been on staff for Brentwood Baptist Church, where he and I worked together for a bunch of years. And this man became my guru, teacher, mentor about all things nerd, social media, gadgets, when to buy what. So do I buy a new phone? No, wait, they're coming out with another one. This was the guy that always gave me that kind of information. One of the things he did was to teach me about social media. Now, I'm an old dog. To me, social media is a complete waste of time. I wouldn't be on social media. I don't enjoy it. But according to this guy, I had to be on it because that's where the conversations were happening. So, since he taught me so much, I thought I would have him come by and teach you some of what he taught me. So first of all, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, explain to me, let's not assume anything. Yeah. Explain to me what social media is.
I think if you were going to boil social media down, essentially think of it like it's the world's largest free ad platform. Essentially, that's what it is in terms of it's the biggest broadcast platform by which you can get your message out. At the same time, there's another layer of it, which is it's really about social interactions between people. I mean, it was really designed at the end of the day, if you've watched the movie The Social Network or read any of the books about Twitter or Facebook starting out, it was really designed to be a connecting with other people. That's what it's really designed. But it's kind of morphed. It's kind of morphed into two lanes. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think people coming into social media for the first time can often get confused. There are really two lanes of social media. There's what we call the social part. We call it the social graph, which is basically, I like content because my friend liked it and they shared it with me, back and forth. Okay. Then there's what we call the interest graph. And that is, I'm really passionate about this thing. So I'm going to make content about it. I'm going to follow it. So for you, Alabama Crimson Tide football, that is your interest graph. Mm-hmm. But you're going to share pictures of your grandkids, mm-hmm. all right? And other family members are going to like that. So social media plays in both of those courts. Mm-hmm. So when you think of it, it's a platform by which you can dive into your interests, and then you can dive in to sharing what's going on in your life, if that's something you feel necessary to do. It's really just a manifestation of the web as it's grown from as back in the day when you had bulletin boards where you'd share about Alabama Crimson football, or when you used to email photos to family members. It's just another layer as the web has grown.
Mm-hmm. And as a pastor, all of my congregation, in some form or fashion, is involved in some aspect of social media. So a good way to talk to my congregation, talk to the community that is that first concentric circle outside my congregation, is through social media.
Yes, without a doubt. So if I was a pastor and I'm going, where do I start? What do I do? Again, going back to that, let's go back to that interest and let's go back to that social. If I was looking at the social and go, okay, how do I do that and do that well? I think what I would look at doing is saying, okay, I'm going to find every single one of my people who are on Instagram, okay? And I'm going to make a list. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go just periodically set a thing like maybe once a day for 30 minutes. And I'm going to go through and just check their profiles, see how they're doing, comment on life, how are things going, because they're giving me a tremendous amount of information about what's going on in their life. Graduations, births, deaths, you name it.
I got a new job.
And your ability now to go in and just say, congrats, I love that. Or, hey, I saw that. I know you're hurting. Hey, bet you got questions. Let's grab coffee. That didn't exist 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now it does. So from that aspect, I think without a shadow of a doubt, there's a huge way of doing that. That in terms of the multiplying effect of that.
Now, just hanging with that moment. Yeah. One of the ways that it has changed, just in my short career with social media, it has gone from being surprised you saw that. Oh, I didn't know that you saw that.
Right.
To it being an expectation that you should have seen it.
Right. And you're exactly right. What you have to do, you're exactly right. We used to call it FOMO, the fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. But what we're learning is you and I both know, because we had long conversations about this, is that that is obviously unhealthy. And over time, that can wear on your soul and wear you down. So you have to be really comfortable with the idea you can't see it all. You can't catch it all. And they may be disappointed, but that's okay. Because you're going to do something that social media can't do, which is when that person is in the hospital and things are going south real fast and they're calling you in to have that conversation with the family, we can't do that on social.
Right.
You're going to be at the bedside with the family. So there's that aspect of it. You're right. There is an expectation put on you, but you've got to be okay with defining that expectation as much as you can. On the interest graph side, you go to the interest side. So you talk about the social side, then the interest side. Well, now you have this thing where if I was in a pastor's shoes, I would draw a simple 5-mile radius around my church, and I'd find every single local business, every institution, and I'd find their social media channels. And I was like, what are they talking about? What are they putting out? Because then all of a sudden is I can now get a sense of not just what's going on with my people, I get a sense of what's going on in my community and what are the conversations that are occurring. And now all of a sudden I can give my 2 cents into those conversations as it pertains to my church. So you now can run both plays at the same time.
Yeah. And that also feeds in your sermon preparation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hear the stories I'm hearing and hear the conversations I'm seeing.
Yes. Yes. At the same time, the beauty of a sermon, and this is why I think pastors actually have an advantage from a content creation perspective.
Oh, do tell.
Than everybody else. Well, okay, so every pastor's different in terms of how long they prepare for a sermon.
Right.
But let's say it's 20 hours a week. All right. You spend 20 hours a week on something. At a lot of churches, you're doing one service, maybe 2. You preach it twice. It never sees the light of day ever again. That's crazy.
No.
That's crazy. It's never. And somebody's going, oh, I remember that sermon you preached a while back. That's it. That's absolutely insane. So why in the world would you not get a video copy, audio copy of that sermon, turn around and use that to fuel your content for your social media? It's absolutely crazy that you would not do that.
So you would take 1 or 2 minute snapshots or video clips.
Exactly. Now, when we say that, a lot of pastors probably think, and rightfully so, they're thinking, well, who's going to do that? Because at a lot of churches, it's me, maybe a part-time AA, and maybe a worship minister who's also / student minister.
Right.
That's most churches. I get that. And I would have told you 10 to 15 years ago, you're exactly right, and there's not much you can do about it other than hire an intern. But with artificial intelligence and with a lot of the tools online, you can actually have all this automated. So I can say, personally speaking, when we work with your sermons now, or when we did work with your sermons, I was able to help take your sermon, upload it to a website. It would review the entire sermon. It would tell me, here are the 10 to 15 viral clips we think are from this sermon. It would actually put the captions, the words down at the bottom of the video, and it would turn around, create the hashtags for me, write the descriptions, and all I had to do was download the clips.
All this time I thought you were brilliant.
Yeah, that's what we do. We make you think that. But those tools exist. You just do a simple Google search for that, and you can go, wait, time out. It doesn't require an army of people.
Right.
We can actually do this in a short amount of time. So I just think pastors should be taking those things, leverage it. And by the way, not just video on social media, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're going with that. You should take that content, have it reworked into your newsletters, into your tweets, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that in that sermon we can pull from. On top of that, and you and I've talked about this, is there's a lot of things that you cut out that are on the floor from your sermon. You mastered the art of the 25-minute sermon, but you and I both know you could have gone 45, 50 if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And there's all that stuff that you could have then turned around and said, oh, by the way, read this book for background on, say, Joshua. Watch this video, do this, read this article. All that content is good as well to be given to your audience.
Yeah. And all of that
feeds in.
The social media stuff.
All that feeds in.
Okay. Now, you know that I have a healthy fear of social media.
Yes.
It can be misused and abused.
Yes.
One, let's talk just a little bit about all these guys that want to argue all the time on social media.
Right.
And just name an argument, name an issue, and they want to debate it or argue with you or point out 4 or 5 things that you did wrong in the last sermon or whatever.
Yeah. Well, first off, Proverbs is pretty clear about we don't argue with fools. Okay. so there's step 1. That's what it is. So you have that. So what I would tell you is when you're dealing with an altercation online, so in other words, somebody doesn't like something you've done, they made a comment, they're writing a post about you. If you know that person, well, guess what? Now you can take that conversation offline. Pick up the phone, call the person, move it offline. If you don't know them, but you're thinking, hey, they may be local. Hey, reach out and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this online. I'd love to kind of unpack where I think some misconceptions. Maybe we find some common ground. If they want to have that conversation, fantastic. If they don't, delete it and move on. In other words, you can't move on.
They're not serious.
Yeah, you got to remember, like, think of it like the information is flowing so fast, you can't keep up with all the negativity. You really can't. So you just have to let 95% of it just go. Just let it go. And yeah, you go, okay, what happens if something goes viral or a hashtag or something about us? Yeah, guess what? In about 4 or 5 days, there'll be something else that happens, or actually less than that, 24, 48 hours. So it's okay, move on. You just simply do not have the mental, or I think even spiritual energy for that matter, to deal with that on a daily basis. Nobody should. So what I've always coached you on was, and I stole this from Cal Newport, who wrote books like Deep Work, So Good They Can't Ignore You, was treat social media like a professional. In other words, you go in, I'm gonna spend 10 to 15 minutes on it, and then I'm done for the day. I'm getting out.
Right.
Don't have the apps on your phone.
Yeah, we're not going to scroll.
You're not going to. We don't doom scroll. Get that off your phone. That's not the healthy way to do it. Is find some tools you can do on your desktop, because you don't have that open 24/7 on your laptop. Do the things you need to do, or have your assistant do the things you need to do, and then get off and be with real people in the real world. That's what you should do.
Okay. Now, what are some of the warnings that you would give a pastor in dealing with social media? Some of the things to some of the minefields that.
Yeah. So I would say minefields are this. I would say I approach it, again, going back to that professional mindset is I personally don't think I would not post personal stuff online. I wouldn't post about your family. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't post about your kids. I wouldn't post about, I know that there's an authenticity thing. People say, well, you're being authentic. And I get that to a certain degree. But the reality is the people you really want to be authentic with is your tribe, your small group, your mentors, whoever you're walking with, your Paul, your Timothy, your Barnabas.
Right.
That's who you be, that person.
And you don't need social media for that.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't. I think when you do that, you may get the sense of satisfaction from it, or you may get the sense of like, you're being real with people. But I think at the end of the day, I think you're causing more harm, because I think you're setting yourself up for what could be failure down the road. I think that I would warn you against that too. I would warn you against.
So let's hold on. You mentioned earlier the Cal Newport, treat it like a professional.
Yeah.
So I don't overshare about my personal life in the office, period.
No.
So don't do that on social media either.
I wouldn't.
Treat it like a professional.
Treat it like,
Okay.
Treat it like you get in front of your congregation.
Right.
What would you say in front of your congregation? If you say that in front of your congregation, then you're good to go. That's what I would do.
Okay.
I think the other aspect of it is that as a professional, talk about the things that you are an expert in.
Okay.
Don't wade into waters that are not your domain of expertise. Okay, so we have an election coming up. I don't think you should weigh in on Biden versus Trump. I really don't. You should.
But I have some real strong opinions on that.
I know. And so your congregation does. You and I learned that as we were like, oh, okay. People think that.
Here we
okay.
go. I still have that COVID scar.
Yes. You and I both. I mean, I remember opening up Facebook and being like, oh, you think this? Okay, that's good to know. And I just think like, stay out of things. Now, there's issues are different. I think issues are different because as you can speak to them from a biblical perspective, I think that's great.
Yeah.
You go down the list. But there's some issues that the Bible, A, may not be clear about, B, you may not be an expert in. Stay away from those waters. It's tempting to go into those waters because you may even feel pressure from your people to do that.
Right.
I've seen our people ask you or ask Jay Strother to speak about issues that both you would look at me and say, I'm not an expert in that thing. So don't do that. It's tempting. A lot of pastors do this because it's really good, what we call clickbait. So for those of you who know what clickbait is, it's simply put, it's a way to get to gamify the audience by offering something that's not really there, And so what you do is you go to a hot topic issue, you give your hot take, but the reality of it is there's not really anything there. And so I would say you should avoid that at all costs.
Because in doing so, you decrease the credibility of your voice.
You do. And it's not, again, like people, my question for a pastor is, why do you want people to come and follow you on social media? My hope is that you're wanting to do that because if you can in some way connect with that person, if your church can connect with that person, that will lead that person to a small group, the worship service, whatever your entry points are into your congregation, and then hopefully the disciple-making process takes hold because somebody has a conversation with them. I hope that's your aim. If your aim is to gain followers, in fact, I would tell you, by the way, pastors, don't look at the follower count. Ignore it completely. Don't ever look at who's following you and who's not following you. Don't, because the number doesn't matter. What I would look at is I would look at how the content's performing. How are people reacting to the content? See, that can inform your sermon.
Right.
So if you sit there and you say, okay, you take those sermon clips, you put them online, it may not inform what you say, it may inform how you say it.
Give me an example.
So one of the things where I will tell you, audience, where I was spoiled by having this man as my senior pastor for social media because you were so good at letting moments breathe. So you could you'd preach, you say this thing, and then you hold the beat for 1, 2, 3, and then you go to the next thing. So it was so good that I could edit your social media clips without listening to the audio. I could just watch you visually on stage. Go, whatever he said right there to right there, that's the clip. We're going to go with that clip. And then we joke, and then we actually lift up the audio and go, yeah, that's what he said. But what it can show you is you know what? People really respond when I do this versus this, when I say this versus that, in terms of how I say it. In other words, why did that clip work? Well, one, I had a strong intro. I had a strong hook to pull them in, to get them in the moment. One, my voice. I did modulation with my voice by which I raised it up and then I brought it down, or I sped it up and I slowed it down. Those things that for communication you're not taught in seminary about.
Right.
Preaching class is like, did you get the text accurate? Did you say the thing the text actually said? Communication, as you and I both know, is a different art form. And social media, you can sit there, you can watch those clips and go, oh, wow, people are really reacting to that. I wonder why. And you read the comments, you go, oh, that's really good to know. Yeah. So when I preach...
Or I thought this was a great point and nobody
reacted to it. Because, the other thing about social media that's, I think, really important is feedback loops for pastors are very scarce. You don't typically hear when you've done a great job. And if you and I joke is that we often think you walk off stage and go, man, I really crushed it. And then you get nothing. And then you walk off and kind of go, that was a warmed over leftover sermon. And people come back going, that was the best thing. I'm going into ministry because of that sermon. You're like, really?
Yeah.
Social media can kind of give you a sense of maybe a little bit of a reality check to what people are actually seeing about your sermons.
Okay. So to recap.
Yeah.
Social media is the new reality.
Yep.
And that if you're going to be an effective leader of your congregation and an effective communicator in your congregation, social media is going to be one of the avenues you do.
Agreed.
There are tools available so that it is not overwhelming to a pastor of any size church or any skill level. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
Except maybe me. You would still panic if I got near the knobs, right?
Correct. You're not allowed that.
Just
no, you're not.
Don't touch anything.
No.
But we still need to be careful.
Yeah, I think I think you have to be careful. You've got to be careful, but you have to be careful with any platform,
anything
you're on for that matter. Keep it. In some ways, a part of it is a little bit of it's a lack of what I would say repetition. And here's what I mean by that. There are things in life that you've learned because you've done it over again and again and again and again. And yeah, the first time you did it was pretty bad. It was scary. All right. Second, third time, it was still scary. And maybe 90 days into it, it's still scary. But all of a sudden, like 6 months into it, if you build that, you get enough reps in, all of a sudden it's not nearly, and then you start going, okay, I should never do that. I should definitely do that. And so I think without a shadow of a doubt, part of the issue is people don't have enough reps, so they don't really know what to do because they haven't put the time and effort and energy in. Yeah.
Okay. But it's the new reality.
It is
so
the
it's
new
another
reality.
skill. If when I left seminary in 1981, right after the invention of the light bulb, and so something like that, if you had come to me and said, "Hey, you're going to have to be able to tell the gospel in 140 characters, 280 characters, and you're going to have a whole staff of people that I lovingly call the nerds, who do nothing but website, social media, video, all of that," I wouldn't have known how to do that or how to explain that to anybody or understand it. But that's the reality of church in our modern time.
It is. And here's another way to look at it. I want pastors to think of it like this. We tend to think in very short increments because the social media works this way in terms of I throw something up, within 24 hours it's gone. You moved on to the next thing. But I want you to think of it as a long game, because that reps that you're building is going to help you down the road as things change and things pivot, 1. 2, YouTube, for example. If you put the time and effort into putting your content on YouTube, think of YouTube less like a social media platform. Think of it like a search engine. And all of a sudden, if you now have gone every, 52 videos once a week, over time, 250 videos, you start doing that math when people are asking questions about which Bible translation should I trust.
Right.
The chance of them hitting your video
have increased 250 times.
Yeah,
right.
It goes up. Why would you not want to do that? So people tend to think of it like in the short game. I want them thinking 5, 10, 15 years out. I want them thinking the long game on it as well.
And most of us are speaking 5 or 10 minutes out.
That's all we're thinking. We're thinking just that brief moment in time.
Okay. All right. Great point. How do people reach you?
You can reach me on Instagram. I'm at Girardier, or LinkedIn. Those are probably the two best places to reach me. You can find me there. DM me if you got questions.
Okay. All right. And you will. This guy's one of the best, and I have loved working with him and love considering him a good friend, and continues to be my teacher. Thanks, Darrel, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. This is the Engaged Church Network. I'm Mike Glenn. Thanks for stopping by.